Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janabal Lava Giridvaradari Yasodanandana Praja Janaranjana Yamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janaballabha Giridvaradari Shodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jai Advaita Chandra Jai Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. We're reading from Sri Caitanya Charitamrta, Adi Lila chapter 8. So I've been told we're doing verses 67 to 72. What you're about to hear is Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's presenting the various Vaishnavas who inspired him and blessed him for composing Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So by hearing this, we'll start to understand a little bit. We'll get a glimpse of how the blessings of the Vaishnavas are so important. At every step of our life, we want those blessings. Whatever station of life we're in, whatever phase of life we're entering in, it's not just some kind of antiquated ritual or blind following of tradition that we seek the blessings of the Vaishnavas. I know that some devotees do this about marriage or wanting to conceive a child or entering the brahmacharya ashram or taking up a new service. Some devotees do that and some don't. And we don't want to lose sight of this tradition. It's not just a ritual. The blessings of the Vaishnavas have potency, and that you see in this chapter of Sri Caitanya Charitamrita. But in the age of Kali, you know what we think. Hey, it's my thing. I do what I want to do. I'm responsible to me. If it's good for me, it's good for all. But if it doesn't happen to be good for all, although it's good for me, then too bad for everyone else. We all just have to get our share of the goodies before it's too late. So that's the age of Kali mentality. I don't need to ask nobody nothing. Who are they anyway? They're going for what they know is good for their own self. So I'm going to do the same for me. As they used to say in my youthful city days, if it's good to you, it's good for you. So that could mean anything, especially in Kali Yuga. But let us consider deeply the potency of the blessings of the Vaishnavas. Vaishnavas are of various levels, there's no doubt about that. But even a neophyte devotee, because he or she is engaged in Krishna's service, at least to some degree, has some credits to them. What to speak of a senior Vaishnava, a devotee dedicated fully to Krishna's service? Their blessings have potency. And remember what the Supreme Personality of Godhead explained to Durvasa Muni when Durvasa Muni was seeking relief from the Sudarshan chakra. He was told by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotees are my heart, and I'm the heart of the devotees. They don't know anyone but me, and I don't know anyone but them. Because Durvasa Muni, in the words of the Acharyas, was presenting the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a question. Like, look, what's more important, the Brahmana or the proper following of the Ekadasi, Dwadasi rituals? Because Durvasa Muni's whole point was Ambarish neglected the proper rituals, which actually wasn't true. So, and I'm a Brahmana. So he was posing this question. What's more valuable? And the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, there's nothing more valuable than my devotee. When you offend my devotee, you offend me. I'm the heart of the devotee. And the devotee is always in my heart. So let's keep that in mind as we seek to progress in bhakti. Let's not become trapped into familiarity. Oh, I see this devotee every day. What's the big deal? Why should I ask him or her for blessings as I proceed in my life? No, the blessings of the Vaishnavas are something that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is so conscious of because he's Krishna conscious. So we begin with text 67. Yadavacharya Gosai Sri Rupera Sangi Chaitanya Charite Tenho Ati Buddha Rangi. Sri Yadavacharya Gosai, a constant associate of Srila Rupa Goswami, was also very enthusiastic in hearing and chanting about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Next verse. Pandita Gosai, Gosaira Shishya, Bugarbha Gosai. Gora Kata Bina A Muke Anya Nai. Bugarbha Goswami, a disciple of Pandita Gosai, that's Gadadhar Pandit of the Panchatattva. Bugarbha Gosai, a disciple of Pandit Gosai, was always engaged in topics regarding Lord Chaitanya, knowing nothing else. Tanra Shishya Govind Puja Chaitanya Das, Mukundananda Chakravarti Premi Krishna Das. Among his disciples were Chaitanya Das, who was a priest of the Govinda deity, as well as Mukundananda Chakravarti and the great devotee Krishna Das. Acharya Gosaira Shishya Chakravarti Shivanand Niravadi Tanra Chitte Chaitanya Nityanand. Among the disciples of Ananta Acharya was Shivananda Chakravarti, in whose heart Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda constantly dwelled. Ar Jata Vrindavan Baise Bhakta Gan Shesha Lila Shunite Sabha Hoila Man. In Vrindavan, there are also many other great devotees, all of whom desired to hear the last pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. So before we go to text 72, let's speak a little bit about what's going on here. Eagerness to hear about Krishna, especially Krishna as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The more that this eagerness develops in us, the more we know we're making spiritual advancement. And as we near the advanced stages of bhakti, we start to feel that I can't live for a moment without glorifying Krishna. This eagerness used to be there for us in material life. You can remember times in your material slogging through the cosmos when you were so eager to do something. Something was about to happen and you were eager for it to happen. Maybe you thought you had met your true love for the month and you were eager. Let me be with that person. Got to be there with that person, for that person. Or maybe it was some event that you thought was so glorious, a concert or a sports match or something. Or maybe just a family reunion with relatives you hadn't seen for so long. Maybe a graduation, a promotion at work, a new job. You were eager. And of course, you know what happens with material eagerness. It soon dissipates as time takes its effect. Because time saturates everything in material existence. The flavor that you were so eager to taste disappears so quickly. Rapidly, the thrill is gone. And that makes you frustrated, although you don't give up. Because what else is there to do except pursue material enjoyment? Even though it kicks you in the face, you still pursue it. This is the great mystery. I'm getting nothing from it practically, a little glimmer. So insignificant. And we make such a big deal out of it. But it's so tiny the shadowy stuff we get from material existence that we call happiness and fulfillment. And we think that little tiny bit justifies everything. We're misers. That's what Prahlad Maharaj says, Kripana. That means one who has the possibility of great wealth, but he or she ignores it, doesn't know how to spend the great wealth of the human form of life. We waste it, we squander these resources that we have. We ignore them, the resources of human consciousness, the human form, just to get a little speck of so-called gratification. And Maya tortures us so much that we're willing to even work so hard just to get that speck. We even pride ourselves sometimes on how hard we're working in material life to get the little speck of dust. Yeah, I'm working for the man. Yeah, I'm doing what's got to be done, As they say in Australia, New Zealand, I'm doing the hard yucca. I don't think you all say that in your neck of the woods. But anyway, Prema says no. I'm doing the slog. Or as they would say in my youthful urban days, I'm working hardy for the party. Anything for a party. So we even say like that, but we can't lift our nose from the grindstone. This is the great mystery of Maya. We're getting kicked in the face, but got to do it. It's got to be done. I have hopes. I have dreams. I shall be promoted. My new job will be fulfilling. My next material relationship will be better because I have so much experience. I know it's going to work out this time, my next material relationship. When I take my holiday, when I get a new accommodation, a different car, things will be better. This is the glare produced by the headlamps on the vehicle of Maya. You're driving on a rural road, let's say, out in the rural areas of Wales, and a car coming towards you from the opposite way has its headlamps on high beam. You can't see. You're blinded. It's dangerous unless the guy turns down his headlamps. So similarly, in material life, we're blinded by the glare of Maya. This is a term that Srila Prabhupada uses that I love so much. The glare of Maya blinds us. So we keep acting like a fool, even though we already have so much experience of being cheated. Here at the Holy Dham of Mahaprabhu, Sri Mayapur Dham, that's where I'm speaking from now, in case you don't know. We had a big ceremony at the Temple of Vedic Planetarium site. His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj and I attended together. I sent His Grace Tarkanath Prabhu a photo and of how we were enjoying life in Mayapur Dham. So we both spoke because it was the 100th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's rooftop meeting, his first meeting with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When Srila Prabhupada had just finished university, and as part of the political protest for India's independence. He refused to accept his diploma, even though he had finished all the courses, because Gandhi was telling everyone, don't cooperate with the British. Uh, don't buy cloth processed in Manchester. Wear homespun cloth from India. Don't accept your diplomas. Don't accept this. Don't accept that. Just non-violent non-cooperation. So Prabhupada was part of that externally. And he went to see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur for the first time, only because one of his friends practically dragged him there. Because as Prabhupada himself describes it, his father was always inviting sadhus to his home without discrimination. And there were so many fakers and pretenders posing as holy persons in Calcutta just for the sake of getting a meal. So Srila Prabhupada, growing up as a child, saw all this, his father's magnanimity. Therefore, when he's in his 20s and his friend says, there's a truly authentic, wonderful, saintly person just waiting, we can go see him. I've got an appointment. We can go see him. I've got a connection. So Srila Prabhupada, no, I've seen enough of these so-called holy persons. Sorry. But his friend practically dragged him by the arm. So that very first temple or center of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's is now owned by ISKCON, and the building is being restored to look exactly like it did in the 1920s. And so you can visit there. You can go up the same stairs that Srila Prabhupada walked, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's quarters are on the roof. And you'll see the very spot where Srila Prabhupada paid his obeisances along with his friend. And then before he could say anything, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, you're an intelligent person. You should spread the knowledge of Mahaprabhu all over the world. Incredible. But Srila Prabhupada was respectfully contesting, respectfully. A cultured person knows how to present doubts or points that he or she is not sure of, how to present those in a respectful way, not the age of Kali way. But well, I mean, wait a minute. Do you really know what you're talking about? So that's probably the way we would do it these days. But no, someone with culture, someone with respect when dealing with someone who is your spiritual elder and your material elder, you're careful. So you present your doubts. You contest the points very respectfully, carefully. You acknowledge, I hear what you're saying, but tell me, can you tell me who will take anything from India seriously until India has independence, political independence? And of course, you know, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him, Krishna consciousness, bhakti, is so important, it can't wait for anything. It can't wait for even political independence, which, to say that in India at that time, oh my goodness. It's like telling someone that down is up and up is down. It's like mind-boggling, because everyone was caught up in political consciousness. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained that political arrangements come and go, political leaders come and go, but devotional service is eternal. So we should always remember this as we become more and more eager to hear about Krishna. Devotional service is eternal. The activity of hearing and chanting about Krishna is eternal. So you might as well get used to it now, because when you do go back to Godhead, that's what you're going to be doing, singing and dancing to Krishna's glories. So I was explaining, back to Mayapur, the home of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. I was explaining to the devotees gathered there a quotation by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur taken from the daily newspaper that his disciples were putting out. Yes, they were putting out a daily newspaper called the Nadia Prakash, along with 4 or 5 other weekly and monthly publications. They presented this daily newspaper at the top of the news sheet. It had their motto, just like we have on the Back to Godhead magazine. Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. They had the only spiritual daily newspaper in the universe. They were quite clever, because actually at that time in Nadia, the district where we have Navadvip and Mayapur today, in Nadia, there were no daily newspapers. So they kind of jumped into the vacuum. They took advantage. You guys got no daily newspapers. Here's one for you. And they would have in the newspaper material news, and then articles about bhakti, philosophy, and then news articles about what was happening in the Gaudiya Math. So they actually made the newspaper so it had 2 sections that could be read independently. You could just toss away one half and read the other. So they would instruct all their congregation, don't read the material part. You toss that part out. Just read the spiritual part. But for the general public, they said, here's a newspaper. It's got the latest news, and it's got some spiritual information too. So the general public would read the whole thing. So this way they were very, very clever. So in that newspaper, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explained that the deception by Kali Yuga. Now think of Kali Yuga, first canto Bhagavatam, as personal, because ultimately everything is personal. The deception by Kali Yuga is the culprit, the only culprit behind all the apparent problems we're facing in the world. More than it being this country or that country, more than it being this politician or that politician, more than the environmental problems, the economic problems, the political problems, the psychological problems, the real culprit, Saraswati Thakur said, is Kali Yuga. And that is what we are protesting. We are marching against Kali Yuga. We're not taking a scattershot approach of, well, should there be Brexit or should there be not? Should there be vaccinations? Should there be not? We are zeroing in with full concentration on the real culprit, which is Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga means, as you know from the first canto, illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. We're the only ones protesting all these 4 things. In the present day, not only are these 4 activities so common, but the governments are making profit off of sponsoring these 4 horrible activities. So let's understand what Lord Chaitanya's devotees are doing in terms of identifying the culprit knowing who are the victims. What are we doing about it? We're attacking the whole foundation. We're attacking Kali Yuga. Another example from the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. There was a big flood in Bengal, causing much damage. And many people were suffering because of the flood. They lost homes and they didn't have anything to eat. And so some welfare worker organizers were collecting funds for it, for relief work. So they heard that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's moths, he was very powerful in terms of the effect and scope of his mission. So these welfare workers heard, hey, they're collecting lots of money for a spiritual event. It's called the Great Theistic Exposition. And meanwhile, there's this flood and people are suffering. Let's go to him. We'll go see him and say, give us a share of your collections. So they did that. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told them that certainly we are sorry for this, for that the flood has disrupted lives and caused some havoc. Certainly we're sorry for that. But we want to point out to you that our compassion is greater. Our activities are greater. You're trying to stop one little puddle and its effects. We are against the whole ocean of material existence. Now, who is the better welfare worker? You're dealing with a puddle. No doubt it's caused problems, and we're sorry for that, but we're dealing with suffering caused by the Bhava Sindhu, the ocean of material existence. We're stopping that. In other words, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told him, can you beat that? Can you top that? If you can top that, we'll give you some of the bucks. But otherwise, back off. You're not getting the paisa. You're not getting a penny. No one could outtalk him. He couldn't be defeated. So, how to produce this eagerness to hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How to do that for ourselves. You know the verse in the third canto of Bhagavatam, Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanti hitkarna rasayana kata. Talks about Krishna when done in the association of sincere devotees, magnify in number one, in power, in strength, in intensity, and number two, in sweetness, in relishability. This is why we need devotees. Yes, sometimes they misunderstand you. Sometimes they cause you inconveniences. But just think of the extraordinary advantages of the association of devotees. With them, the hearing and chanting about Krishna becomes more powerful and sweeter. So as you progress in bhakti, I often explain this point, as you progress in bhakti, you more and more realize that more important or more impactful than the inconveniences that Prabhu causes me, more important are the benefits. I need the association of devotees for getting the maximum benefits of chanting, hearing, because in their association, Lord Kapila Dev explains, the hearing and chanting potency increases. Not only that, Touch Josanat Ashapavaga Vartmani, Shraddharati Bhakti Anukramishati. Hearing and chanting in the association of devotees enables the doorway to liberation to swing wide open. Of course, bhakti is actually far beyond liberation. But just to get you to understand the inconceivable effects of hearing and chanting about Krishna in the association of devotees, the example is given by Lord Kapila Dev, the incarnation of Godhead, that the doorway to liberation swings wide open. Of course, the devotee is so busy in devotional service that he or she doesn't even notice that the doorway to liberation is swung open. You can just imagine yourself like walking down a crowded street in your city, and there's so many people walking on the walkway, and there's traffic on the road, and as you're just walking, you have to go somewhere, and meanwhile a shop owner opens his door to the store. What's it to you? There's so many shops on the street, so many people, you got to go where you're going. You just keep on walking. You know, hey, did you see that shop owner just open a door? It's so insignificant. So that's how Lord Kapil Dev explains liberation in terms of bhakti. It happens, but the devotee is so busy in service, he or she doesn't notice. As Bilva Mangala Thakur, the great sadhu, explained, the mukti lady personified, the liberation lady, is knocking on your door. I got something for you, Bhakta. Let me in, let me in. Sorry, I'm too busy serving. But it's me, liberation from material existence. Everyone wants it. After how many lifetimes does this opportunity come? Pay me some attention. Sorry. I'm too busy absorbed in devotional service, which is beyond liberation, more than liberation. You may know a famous verse in the 10th canto, Prayers by Lord Brahma chapter, summarized in the Krishna book also. And it's verse number 58 of chapter 14, the 10th canto. You can look it up later. Samashrita ye palava plavam mahatpadam punya yasho marare. Bhavambadi avatsa param yad vitpadam nate sham. By taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. And what is the nature of those lotus feet? They're pinkish colored and so tender, like fresh leaves. By taking shelter of those feet, you cross over the ocean of material existence so easily. So much so that the massive ocean of material existence, the Bhava Sindhu, the ocean of becoming and unbecoming, shrinks to the amount of water contained in the hoof print of a calf. Very small, hoof print of a calf. No problem to step over that. Now the acharyas point out a very interesting phenomenon about that example. The ocean of material existence shrinks to the hoof print of a calf, and you easily step over that hoof print, that reduced material existence. You easily step over it to Krishna's lotus feet, to his supreme abode, where you become one of his associates. But there's an interesting part of this, as the acharyas explain. You don't, because you're absorbed in Krishna's service, always thinking of Krishna's pleasure, you don't notice that you crossed over the hoof print, or that the ocean has become the hoof print. You don't notice it all because of the happiness of devotional service. You're not aware that you're stepping over. You're just aware that I'm situated at Krishna's lotus feet, pinkish and tender, and the happiness flowing from serving those lotus feet is my absorption. Therefore, whatever I stepped over, I don't even know. I don't even notice I stepped over something. I'm just focused on those lotus feet. Samashitaye plabam mahatpadam punya yashomarare. Krishna is known as Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon. You can read about the Mura demon in the Krishna book. So, this eagerness to hear about Krishna is our aim. And you develop that eagerness in the association of devotees. So again, I often repeat this, bear with me. Yes, sometimes devotees misunderstand one another. Sometimes they seem to get on each other's nerves a bit. But don't minimize the benefits. I like this example I just read Srila Prabhupada giving about focusing on getting to your destination. I don't know. I don't think in Cardiff they have a tube, but in London you have the tube, or otherwise known as the subway or the metro. So sometimes these metros or tubes, whatever city they're in, can be jam-packed. And I don't know if you've ever been on the subway in Tokyo, where they actually have employed persons who, when people are loading up at the subway stop, these other persons called loaders, they push you they're on the platform and they're pushing people like sardines into the subway. That's their job. They have these long poles. They hold them like that and they just push bunches of persons. More can fit into the car. More into the subway car. And then the doors close and they wait for the next train to come along, and people want to get on. They do the same thing. Cram you into the car. So they don't do that in London, do they? So Prabhupada gives this example that, let's say you're in one of these crowded tube cars or metro cars or subway cars, and it's going to take you maybe an hour to reach your stop. Are you going to spend your time trying to sort out the crowd? Hey, look, folks, it's too crowded in here. I want you people over here, and I want you people over there. And would you please shut up? And no, you're not like that. What do? I just got to tolerate for an hour, and then I'm getting to my destination. The reason why I'm in this car, this railroad car, subway car, the reason why I'm in it is to get to my destination. But if you forget I'm in the car to get to the destination, and you spend all your time making political arrangements within the car, all persons who are wearing red shirts, I want you at this end of the car, and all the others on the other end, and on and on it goes. You've totally forgotten. What are you doing there? You're in the subway car, you're in the tube, you're on the train to get to your destination. So just focus on getting to your destination. Be as comfortable as you can while in this temporary material world. But remember your destination. Our destination is not physical in the ordinary sense. Our destination is hearing and chanting and dancing about Krishna. Those are the activities of the spiritual world. COVID restrictions have made me miss chanting and dancing so much. We had down under much more severe restrictions. Like in Australia, the government said, no singing and no dancing. It made you, well, as they say, you don't miss your water till the well runs dry. Dancing is an essential part of Mahaprabhu's mission. As Prabhupada explains it, when you start dancing in kirtan, the potency of the soul is ignited. You come to life because you are the spirit soul, and the dancing brings that out. We want to dance, we want to chant and take prasad with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the same as Krishna. Let's go to Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 13. Chapter 13, you may remember, is the last chapter done by Srila Prabhupada before his departure. And he presented us, he gave us the rendition of this chapter with his Bhaktivedanta purports when he was in a condition that the doctors say an ordinary person would be constantly crying out in pain. And yet when you read this chapter, I hope you all have read chapter 13 of the 10th canto, most of you, unless you're very new. Prabhupada's making jokes. Four-headed Brahma, four-headed scientists, and like that, in such a condition. And it's such a beautiful chapter. I remember at the BBT, sitting at my desk in Los Angeles, when the manuscript that Prabhupada, the final manuscript that Prabhupada had dictated, arrived on my desk. It was sent from Vrindavan, India, and it arrived on my desk. And I started to read it before putting it into production. I started reading it, and in my heart, I knew this is the last chapter. This is the end of the year after year marathon we had at the BBT trying to keep up with Prabhupada. You may remember the famous Caitanya Caritamrta marathon, in which, well, prior to that, devotees had, at the BBT, had been giving Prabhupada one book every 6 months, and he was not satisfied. In fact, he was very displeased. One book every 6 months. We were way behind him. He was almost the entire Caitanya Caritamrta ahead of us, as well as the 5th canto. We were not delivering. Of course, I was not at the BBT at that point when they were so far behind. I was a full-time Sankirtan devotee, like so many of you. So Prabhupada wanted an immediate transformation, and devotees, frightened, came up with what they thought was a glorious plan that would satisfy him. They said, we've racked our brains. We brilliant managers have come up with a plan to give you one book every month. We've increased the pace, not doubling it, but 6 times. Wow, glorious, right? Huge eye, yes. Suppose Tarkanath Prabhu or Dial Moore Prabhu came up with a plan to increase something, book distribution, fundraising, the construction speed, the renovation speed by 6 times. Who could fault that? Prabhupada did. No. He didn't accept this one book every month instead of one every 6 months. He said, I want all missing 17 volumes in 2 months. That's 7 books a month. No, not 7. That's 8.5 books a month. You can imagine the devotees' mind when they heard this. It's like your temple president pointing to dry land and saying, "This is water. Swim." Wait a minute. Everyone, this is dry land. Anyone can see that. You couldn't say that to Prabhupada, of course, but the minds were working that way. I mean, because you had the best managers in ISKCON, they had put their heads together and come up with a new plan, which they thought was incredible, and Prabhupada just rejected it. I want everything in 2 months. And then he planted his feet. This is on a morning walk. He planted his cane. You do this, or otherwise you are all rascals. That's a serious word in India lingo. Basically, it meant I cut you off. So what could devotees do? They were in shock at first. What could be their recourse? What options did they have? You couldn't say, I don't know, Gurudev is getting a bit way over the top. We're going to find a Siksha guru. You couldn't do that. It was only Prabhupada. And of course, there's never been anyone in recent day and age like Prabhupada. So no one wanted to go anywhere else. So Prabhupada had our arms twisted way up behind her back. So some or other, this mission impossible was achieved. Showing you, if you take the order of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu as it comes down through parampara, you can be empowered to do extraordinary tasks. And this 13th chapter of the 10th canto is like Prabhupada's final stamp on the document, showing you, I'm not from this world. I'm from the spiritual world. Do you understand? Read this chapter and tell me what ordinary person, what person from the material world can do a chapter like this in my condition. Read it and always remember. So here's the first verse of the 13th chapter of the 10th canto. Shri Shuka Uvacha Sadhu Prishtam Mahabhaga Traya Bhagavatottama Yanutanaya Sishyasya Shrinvan Api Katamahu. This is Shukadeva Goswami congratulating Pritchett Maharaj, calling him Mahabhaga. You're so fortunate. And Sadhu Prishtam, I have been so honored by your inquiry, by the questions you're asking me. This is the guru glorifying the disciple. You might be confused at first and think this is Pritchett Maharaj glorifying Shukadeva Goswami. No, it's the reverse. Sadhu Prishtam, I'm so appreciating. I'm overflowing with gratitude because of your questions. And you are so fortunate. You are Bhagavatottama. You are the best of devotees. Why? The acharyas point out that Pritchett Maharaj would ask, why am I the best devotee, Bhagavatottama? And Shukadeva Goswami explains, because you're hearing all the topics about Krishna as if you never heard them before. That's how intense your eagerness is. When you hear the glories of Krishna, they are ever fresh to you. As Prabhupada writes in the purport, even though advanced devotees hear continually about the Lord for years, they still feel that these topics are coming to them as newer and fresher. Therefore, such devotees cannot give up hearing of the pastimes of Lord Krishna. And further on in the purport, he says, Parikshit Maharaj, therefore, is addressed as Bhagavatottama, the best of devotees, because unless one is very much elevated in devotional service, one cannot feel ecstasy from hearing more and more and appreciate the topics as ever fresher and newer. So this is very important. Now you might say, well, that's Pritchett Maharaj. I mean, really, how can this verse apply to us down here on the ground where we're battling lust, anger, greed, envy, and illusion? And we go to a class or we open a Bhagavatam volume and, oh, haven't I heard this before? Or is this speaker going to say any new nectar that I've never heard before? Oh, it's just so and so speaking, or it's just a book. How many times have I read Bhagavad Gita? I've read it 3 times. I mean, amazing, isn't it? I'm so great. I read it 3 times. What more? What more do you want out of me? I've even done Bhakti Shastri. I've got a certificate. How great I am. But here we see the real standard, to perceive the topics as newer and newer. In other words, as if you never heard them before. This is what we're aiming for. So I was explaining to the devotees in Ukraine amidst the great tragedy. It was probably the most difficult class I've ever given in my life, speaking to devotees who are evacuating their cities and with only the belongings they can carry, and they don't know what's going to happen when they go, if they can go to sleep at night. They don't know what's going to happen in the morning when they wake up. They're hearing missiles overhead and surface to air missiles overhead to knock down those incoming missiles, and water being cut off, electricity being cut off. It's hard for me, I told them, it's hard for me to go to sleep at night knowing here I am in a comfortable, for the moment, comfortable situation, and you all are in such suffering. And this was the most successful yatra in Europe in terms of congregational members and supporters and initiated devotees, more than 15,000. And in terms of initiated devotees, more than 3,000 in the country. And this is a country with practically 0 persons from Bharat. Only students who study the medical science at medical schools there are from India. Otherwise, there's no Indian congregation to depend on. Blessed Indian congregation. This is all just locals. Yet it's the biggest yatra in Europe. And so the question would be, why is Krishna allowing this to happen? And what can I say to these devotees? There were 180 of them gathered on Zoom. The day before, His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj gave class for them. There were 300. By the time I started giving class the next day, they were evacuating the cities. They were in motion trying to get to the other side of the country, the western side, close adjacent to Hungary and Poland, and rather than the eastern side. So what can I say? They are just trying to survive. They don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Where's the food? Will the money, will the currency still work? So I explained to them this verse by Pritchett Maharaj and said, even though, as you'll find out in the next verse from Shukadeva Goswami, such persons who hear like this, I've never heard it before, this Leela of Krishna, it's ever fresh, they're Paramahansas. Shukadeva Goswami says, Paramahansas Devotees who have accepted the essence of life are attached to Krishna in the core of their hearts, and he is the aim of their lives. It is their nature to talk only of Krishna at every moment, as if such topics were newer and newer. They are attached to these topics just as materialists are attached to topics of women and sex. Now, footnote, when the Bhagavatam talks about women in terms of enjoyment, it's not simply restricted to a particular gender. Stri refers in a general sense to anything that's an object of enjoyment. Whether it's a male body or a female body, or a luxurious house, or a newer that, it's all the expanse of the material energy that we see as our objects for enjoyment. So Shukadeva Goswami is saying, just like materialists like to talk about any object of material enjoyment, male, female, this, that, whatever, and they love to talk about it. Similarly, devotees love to talk about Krishna. It's a great example when you think of it. So I said to these devotees in Ukraine, in such a hellish war situation, I said, if you can just make one or two steps in this direction, Krishna will be so grateful and you'll never forget it. If amidst these circumstances, you can increase your attachment for hearing and chanting about Krishna, if you can cling more tightly to Krishna's lotus feet for your chanting, hold on tight to your Bhagavatam. If you can do that, this is the real Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtana, your personal victory, which will stay with you all your life. You'll never forget it. That even though these were the toughest times, somehow or other, I tried to become more attached to chanting Hare Krishna. You'll capture Krishna's attention in this way. What else could I say? Otherwise, persons could accuse, even our own devotees could accuse. Come on, Maharaj, look at these situations. Bombs are falling, people are being shot, how residences, apartment buildings are being destroyed. And here you are telling people, just try to increase your attachment for chanting Hare Krishna. Is that for real? Yes, it is for real. Certainly, we have to do all the practical necessities to maintain our existence. But the prime necessity is attachment for Krishna's glories. But how can we see that all the time? It seems impossible in such hellish circumstances. We've got to beg Krishna, how, even in this situation, can I make spiritual advancement? So I begged them and I begged myself. I said, let's just make one or two steps in this direction. Don't just dismiss what Shukadeva Goswami says because it's for Paramahansas, as he describes it. He's showing us the goalposts. Let's make some progress up the field. We've got to know what the goal is. And you just make one or two steps in this direction, and Krishna is grateful. So I hope you agree that I said the right thing. It's very difficult to speak to such an audience. I remember in 2014, a Ukraine festival in Crimea before Crimea was annexed forcibly to the other country. So we would have festivals there attended by 13,000 persons, 13,000 devotees. They were from Russia, they were from Ukraine, they were A few devotees would come from the UK or other countries in Western Europe. 13,000, everyone chanting and dancing them in ecstasy, forgetting about where are you from, what's your gender, what do you do? No, just Hare Krishna. 13,000. It was the biggest festival in ISKCON. And then I remember saying to His Holiness Naranja Maharaj after that festival, this is such a blow against Maya. We must expect a reaction. This is such a powerful blow against the illusory energy. We can't expect Maya to just stand idly and watch this happen, especially in this part of the world. The former Soviet bloc. You're not supposed to be doing these things in this part of the world. I was discussing that with His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj, and he said, you're not supposed to be doing that in any part of the world. In any part of the world, you have to expect retaliation from Maya. So it was hard speaking to these devotees. It was grueling. What could you say to them in such a situation? None of you are old enough to remember what it was like living in London during World War II, the nightly air raids, the Luftwaffe coming over the channel, flying over the channel nightly and bombing London, not only London, but Coventry and other cities, wherever they thought there were military industries. It was terror. And then near the end of World War II, the Nazis were sending rockets, V2 rockets. So we don't know what that's like. I hope you all never find out. But these devotees in Ukraine, they're going through such a hellish situation. And what can you tell them? So they don't think, why is Krishna doing this to us? We just wanted to be Krishna conscious. I told them that if they can make one or two steps closer to Krishna, they'll set an example for the whole of Lord Chaitanya's mission. So let's remember the eagerness that Lord Chaitanya's devotees, and you heard their names, Ananta Acharya, Shivananda Chakravarti, Chaitanya Das, Mukundananda Chakravarti, Krishna Das, Bhugarba Gosai, Yadavacharya Gosai. They're all eager to hear about Lord Chaitanya, especially his later pastimes that Vrindavan Das Thakur didn't cover in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So we'll conclude. We'll take a few questions. We'll conclude by touching upon verse 72, but I think next time whoever speaks can take up text 72 onward fully. More agya karila sabe karuna koriya. Tan sabara bole niki nirlaja haiya. By their mercy, all these devotees ordered me to write of the last pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because of their order only, although I'm shameless, I have attempted to write this Caitanya Caritamrta. So the next person who gives class can get into this purport about how there's a contradiction, I'll point out. And I'll pass the ball to the next person who speaks about this purport. It talks about taking pride in being empowered to write transcendental literature, at the same time being ashamed. Why is it me who's the one to write these narrations of Mahaprabhu's pastimes? Doesn't make sense, it seems. I was going to speak a long time about that, but maybe next time I give class, you can remind me and I'll refer back to it. But it is a contradiction, a paradox I've thought a lot about. Pride and then shame. But in bhakti, all these elements that apparently are contradictory can be resolved. All right. I thank you. Thank you for letting me get something about Ukraine off my chest. Letting me download on you. Shivaram Maharaj and I are here in Mayapur, and we're consoling Niranjan Maharaj, who's dedicated 38 years of his life building up that yatra. And then, of course, you can't stamp out Lord Chaitanya's mission. So now let's see how things are rebuilt, under what situations, under what circumstances. You can't stamp out Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission. There are setbacks, there are apparent defeats, but somehow or other, Mahaprabhu's mission always marches forward. Sometimes the sun goes behind the clouds, only to reemerge later, even hotter. All right, any questions?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes, it's that Gopal Rai. When I was talking about dancing, of course, I was thinking of you. Gopal jump. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful class. As you were talking, I was reflecting about how, in contrast to a lot of other people, I find myself in quite a comfortable situation at the moment. And I've been reflecting recently how, especially in the very early years of Krishna consciousness, I had more of an impetus to hear and chant, probably because I was turning to Krishna out of some material suffering. And now I'm probably not suffering in the same way as I used to, but I need to reignite that desire to hear and chant about Krishna while I have such an opportunity to do so. I was wondering if you could give any advice on this.
Revival is easy in the right association. So you associate with those who are striving for that taste, and it'll be easy for you to go to a higher level. It's all about association, as Lord Kapila Dev says. We've just gone through COVID, or we are going through COVID and its various variants. And it's all about association. You get the bug. So similarly, look for those who are dedicated to hearing and chanting about Krishna through thick and thin, and hang out with them. Whether your family members, your comrades in the Sankirtan mission, if you see that there's no one, and I can't believe that, who with whom you can have a revival with, then convert some of your fellows and say, hey, let's get into this. Let's do this. Make it possible, but don't give up. Sometimes we all feel that we need a recharge. I'm here in Mayapur after 2 years. Oh, I missed it so much. Prabhupada established these Dham facilities so that, as he said, especially that those preaching in the West could come and recharge their batteries. I couldn't do that for 2 years. But now here I am, by Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Of course, I have to leave in a week, but I've been here a month and I'm so grateful. Wonderful association. I have Shivaram Maharaj right up above me, right up on the floor. My Naranja Maharaj right across the way. How kind Krishna is to me. So it's the nature of the material world to wear things down. Krishna talks about that in the beginning of the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sakalenaha mahata yoga nashta parantapa. In the course of time, due to the movements of time, the purport of Bhagavad Gita became lost. Things ran down. So you always have to be aware that's natural in the material world. Things run down. So you've got to devise methods to go uphill. Sometimes we may even seem to fall off the wagon a bit, so to speak. But we pick ourselves up, which is possible in good association. You know all this. You're just asking for the sake of helping others. So I thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. I've been really enjoying the readings as well between you and Sri Ramaraj and Naranjana Swami.
Not too much for you. We get really way out there sometimes.
No, it's nice to hear, and it's nice to have examples of, just how to hear and read the books and discuss with your friends. So, thank you.
Yes, we get by with a little help from our friends. Anything else? No other questions? I've got about 5 minutes before I have to go have lunch with Naranja Maharaj. He kindly allowed us to delay lunch so I could speak this class, and then we'll still have lunch together. So normally I take lunch at 1:30 in Mayapur time, and now it's 20 after 2. So we agreed to delay till 2:30. But still, we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I see Gauranga Gopal ready. Let's see how deep his question is going to be and whether I can handle it in 5 minutes.
Hare Krishna, Gurumar. I was just wondering how can we break down these mental barriers that sometimes make us think that there's only so much we can achieve in devotional service, when we can hear what you just explained about the Caitanya Caritamrta marathon, that actually impossible things are possible. So I just wondered how to break down these barriers.
The impossible, achieving the impossible is up to Krishna, but you endeavor knowing that devotional service is amazing and inconceivable things can happen. But you're doing the fundamentals. Any sports coach will tell you the game is won, first of all, by the fundamentals that you practice every day, the basics of the sport. And then the icing on the cake is the inspiration, maybe an inspirational speech or some special moment, some special happening that ignites the whole team. But without your stressing the fundamentals, you won't win the match. So I'm saying 2 things. Don't neglect the fundamentals of bhakti. At the same time, be aware that Krishna can do the impossible. And that Caitanya Caritamrta 5th Canto Marathon, even today we know when we look back at it, it was impossible. It makes no sense. But an energy descended, the internal potency descended. once we bought into Prabhupada's command. So you'll get such opportunities. I remember His Holiness Shivaram Maharaj and I were discussing, and he was saying that unless devotees have marathons and opportunities to stretch themselves beyond their conceptions, they'll always remain at a certain level of bhakti. But once they have an experience of the impossible happening, to varying degrees impossible, once they have that experience, their spiritual life goes to another level. It goes beyond the range of what they could predict with their limited mind and senses. Oh, we can only do this much, and only this can happen, and that's the way it is. Everyone knows. So every once in a while in our life, for those fortunate devotees, Krishna arranges some task that stretches you. And you start to think, as Prabhupada said, unless I become more pure, I can't do this. Unless I become empowered by Krishna, I can't do this. Every devotee needs that kind of situation so that you'll be motivated to sacrifice with enthusiasm. You need a challenge, in other words. And in that way, through those challenges, you'll stretch yourself beyond what you thought you could do. You can't stretch every day, day after day. You have to maintain and sustain. But every once in a while, when you get an opportunity to rise above your comfort zone, that's when you start seeing Krishna do amazing things. So this is why Prabhupada said every devotee needs a sense of challenge, so that he or she thinks, I'll follow the regular principles. I have to, because otherwise, how can I do this service? Where will the force of purity come from? Otherwise, Prabhupada said, they'll grow weak and fall away, slack, they'll become slack. So he said it's the function of the leaders to always create a sense of challenge, so that devotional service is obviously spontaneous, individual, and voluntary. Vaisheshika Prabhu loves to bring out that trio: spontaneous, individual, and voluntary. The leader inspires that. Let's do it. Take your individual self and do it. It's all voluntary, but let's do it. All right.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Okay. So now, if you'll allow me, I shall take lunch prasad by the mercy of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. I thank you all for your kind attention. I'm looking forward in a few months to seeing all of you face to face. That means London. I hope the Studio 108 will be finished in London by then. And of course, the glorious Soho Temple, I can see now. And then the new outpost in Bath. And do we have one in Bristol yet? Or is that still on the drawing board? Huh?
On the drawing board, ongoing.
Okay. All right. And of course, I hear that the construction in Cardiff will be starting soon. Is that so?
On the 28th of March.
Okay. A lot is happening.
We've pushed the button. We've pulled the trigger.
All right. So yes, I look forward to seeing you all then. In the summertime, Krishna willing. I thank you so much for tolerating my absence. I wasn't slacking off, please. Thank you very much. Glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.